I could leave with a few tips of just kind of like finding that balance between like living a life well lived and just going for the big bucks and going for the money. Like I'm entering into this season, I do it every year of where at the end of the year, I'm a goal oriented guy. I'm always making goals. I'm always making plans. And if left unchecked, I will go too hard.
There's an entire generation of Americans who no longer care about prestige, titles, work travel, fancy offices, and lunches. Welcome to Mundane Millionaires, a podcast for this generation of small business owners who want to set their ego aside and focus on what matters: family, community, quality of life, and cash flows. In each episode, Eric Pacifici and Kevin Henderson uncover what it takes to get a little money in the bank, control your time, and invest in building great families and lives. Let's get started.
So you guys recently went to Kilimanjaro, and we'll cut to the chase in just a second, but you guys climbed Kilimanjaro together. It was a group of how many entrepreneurs?
There's 12 of us.
12. How many RSVP'd and how many showed, Clint, in the end?
That's a great question.
What was the pull through?
We had about probably 30, 35 on the early interest list. And that when it came nut cutting time, pulling out the wallet and putting down the deposit, a bunch, some which will not be named, faded away.
Well, so was it about and I'll tell you, there's absolutely no way both Kevin and I could have climbed that mountain at the same time.
Zero chance.
We would have come back to starting. We'd be running an HVAC business right now. Let's just put it like this.
No, we wouldn't. We'd be navigating bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be distributing funds from our trust account.
It wasn't that expensive of a trip. I think it was just, for most people, it was just getting the time to get away.
That was certainly the hardest part for me.
Yeah, well, and that's the entrepreneurial life. That's the point I was going to make. This is a group of entrepreneurs, and how many of those 35 can realistically cut from their business for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
That's the life.
And it was during a school year, so it was like everybody's in October, early October, most people's lives are going full speed.
Yeah.
And so being able to walk away for 2 weeks and in October is tough.
All right.
Yeah.
So
before you got on, Eric, you
didn't
get the background before you got on, but Clint we were talking about Kilimanjaro. Clint made a joke that his wife is still reminding him about that trip. And my wife, Tara, is still the same way. It's a lot. It was as much on us as it was on our families to have gone away for 2 weeks. So it was quite an undertaking. I don't begrudge anyone that wanted to, but couldn't make it.
You guys have some goodwill to restore. You'll be good by 2025, I'm sure. No problem.
That's right.
All right. So Clint, let's dive in, man. So you run Bison Business Brokerage, which is now a national business brokerage shop. You have a prominent social media following. You've written pretty prolifically on business buying, selling, the like. I think a lot of people listening to this are going to know your background, so I don't think we need to belabor your background. But for those of you that don't know Clint, he's a terrific business broker located in South Texas. You started with Texas Business Buyers was the original brand, great brand, but quickly, I think primarily driven by social media. We could talk about that. I think you outgrew just the Texas confines, which is a pretty impressive statement to make, and are now running a national brokerage called Bison Business Brokerage. And I bet, my guess is that you will be a powerhouse in the next 10 years. You'll be number one. That's my personal bet. I think you're going to kill it. I think the social presence too, in particular, is a superpower that other people don't have that you have. So kudos to you for what you've built, but we don't need to get into that too much. Those of you that don't know Clint, go check out some of his other podcasts, his website. Is there anything before we dive in, Clint? What do you want to plug, man? What are you working on? Let's start with telling people how to find you and the things you want to plug.
Yeah, I mean, my main business is Bison Business. We just call it Bison Business. It's bisonbusiness.com. And then if you want to get, most people that want to reach out are looking for businesses to buy. They're looking for deals. And our early notice deal newsletter is called Probably a Good Deal. It's kind of a fun name, but if you go to probablyagooddeal.com, you can just sign up right there, or there's links to that from the Bison Business website. So that's always a great way to get a hold of us.
So you've got a business brokerage. Tell us concretely, you got also probably a good deal, which is a newsletter where you distribute opportunities. What else are you
Right.
working on?
Yeah. So, 2 years ago, I wasn't on Twitter, and Twitter kind of changed my life because it exposed my message, I guess, to a much broader audience. And so we went from Texas Business Buyers to Bison Business on a rebrand about a year ago.
Yep.
And we for the past 7-8 years, we were mainly sell side representation of Texas based brick and mortar businesses. And now we've expanded our offerings to now we do nationwide, and we also do buy side advisory as well as sell side advisory, because a lot of our audience and people that were reaching out to us for assistance were buyers, because I think that's X or Twitter is covered up in buyers, and a lot of folks wanted our takes on deals or wanted our help on deals, but we weren't really set up for that. So we brought some buy side services to market this last year, including a deal advisory service called Buyer Sherpa. And so that's just like it sounds. If you're going to climb a mountain that you've never climbed before, like Kevin and I just did, you want people that have done it 100 times by your side, helping make sure you don't die on the mountain, And so we do buy side advisory. And then we also have a nascent search program called Search for You, which is basically doing proprietary off market search, because we found that was kind of like an underserved part of the market. There's these guys coming out of MBA school in the traditional search world that have, the traditional search funds where they have a salary and money to pursue deals full time. But you have this whole self-funded search group, which is a lot of our friends and besties that do deals with us and SMB Law Group, that a lot of these people are holding down full-time jobs, or they already own small businesses, and they don't have time to do full-time proprietary outreach. And so we're fractionalizing that and letting people just do engagements where we build a list and work a list of off-market pursuits, because that's the most common frustration I get as a broker with a big audience is, we're a small shop. We do quality deals, but anytime you talk to me, I've got maybe 10 that we're working on. And when you're reaching, we get millions of impressions a month on social media. That translates to thousands of inquiries.
Yeah.
I've got 10 and 7 are under contract. I've got maybe 3 available. And so when people reach out and they're like, hey, do you have something in Michigan that's in manufacturing and metalworking? I'm like, I know, dude, I've got 3 on the market.
Yeah. You don't have 4,000 businesses.
So I can't meet everybody's needs. Yeah. So that was a big frustration. And I think that's a big frustration for buyers. And so the search program that we're doing called Search for You is a way to solve that. So we're like, okay, well, let's just find all of the ones in Michigan that meet your criteria, form that list and work that list for you. And you can just pay us to do that as a service, and then a small success fee if you get one closed. It's a pretty straightforward offering, and we're still kind of limiting. There's a waiting list for that right now. We're limiting the amount of people we do that while we work on figuring out how to scale that. But that's been a successful launch this year as well.
Are you reaching Go ahead, Kev.
Well, I was just going to say, it raises a good question that I think has come up a few times. It'll be helpful, I think, to talk about openly here. And that is, like, why in this industry is it so hard to find a collection of high quality businesses on market in the way you can in a lot of other industries? The one I think that this is most akin to, that people like to compare it to, is real estate, which we will be the first to tell you there are a lot of differences in buying a business than buying real estate. But when you think about a Zillow or a realtor.com or something, why is it that it's so hard to go out and find these quality businesses, that they can't pick up the phone to Clint, and Clint has access to a database of 8,000 businesses around the country that they can pull? Like, here are 15 businesses in this random town in Michigan that you called me about, as opposed to like full on search service to go and uncover those.
Well, and let me piggyback off that before you answer it, Clint. Are you reaching sellers on social media as well? Is your social presence helping drive that, like Kevin said, that list of high quality businesses?
It is. Yeah. We get, I'd say about half of our inbound sellers are coming from social media or direct referrals through social media, and about half are coming through SEO and other like digital means, but we don't do any, as a firm, we haven't done any cold outreach our entire time. We've always stayed busy, which is our reputation. And before I got on Twitter, I was already pretty active on LinkedIn and Facebook, and just local. I'm just the local Texas well liked business broker until a year ago, a
Yeah.
year or two ago, when people started to know me more broadly. And I think that social media has been huge for us because basically what it allows you to do is build rapport at scale. And I think you
Yeah.
guys have done that with the legal profession. But people want to do business with people they like, know, and trust. And it's you can form those one on one, or you can put yourself out there. And that's what I think trips out other business brokers that I've taught about my social media approach is like they're traditionally a very private group, and they're very
Yeah.
concerned about confidentiality, and they're used to playing everything close to the vest.
Let
And
me
I'm a
introduce
guy
you to
that kind of
lawyers,
wears
Clint.
yeah, so I wear my heart on my sleeve. I joke, I make memes, I get entangles with you and Reg and all the other characters on SMB Twitter and mix it up with you guys. And I think you can do that and have fun and lead with your heart and your values and still not violate client confidentiality. And then what that does is in a world where most people, I think legal's the same way, aren't talking publicly about what they do, that means most people don't know a good lawyer. They don't know a good business broker that specializes in this space. And just by being yourself, showing up with a full heart and sharing your values and who you are and your family and your vacations and pizza or whatever, people feel like, I know that person. I like that person, even if they've never met you. And it scales, to thousands and thousands of people. And then people eventually over time get comfortable making that referral. And so before Twitter, I was already living my life somewhat publicly across Facebook and LinkedIn, and that everybody either owns a business or they know people that own businesses, and when it's time for them to sell, they don't know how to do it. They don't know who to
Yeah.
use, and so they're asking their friends. I'm thinking about selling my business. What do I do? And here I am, just the guy that's out living in public, sharing stories and sharing what I do, and I just
Yeah.
become the natural referral, and that's proven to scale even nationally now that things have grown. So it's a huge uh, secret weapon for us.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of flipped the order. I wanted to talk about this last, but I think the beauty too of that, and then we can move past it and talk about business buying. But the beauty of it is I think that the clients that are not a good fit, they know that before they even get on the phone, right? We're not, as lawyers and as brokers and service professionals, you're not going to be the right fit for everybody. And I love the idea that there are people out there that see my presence as I'm sharing similarly to you. Maybe I've offended you by saying that I share similarly to you. I don't know, but sharing, and I love the idea that there are people that see my presence and go, that guy's not for me, before that we even had that console, saving ourselves a lot of time. So it kind of cuts both ways.
Yeah, 100%.
But
The vegetarians out there that can't handle pepperoni on pizza, is that what you're referring to, Eric?
or just are people who are dieting generally, the taco guys, like don't even be doing a consult. But Clint, I think if I were to leave the law tomorrow, what would I go do? And I think for me, the answer would be I would either go work for a bank and be a BDO, or I would want to go do what you do. And the reason I would want to do that is that you see businesses, the inside of businesses, large scale. And through that experience, my guess would be, what is a good business and how to build a good business better than anybody. And I think that experience is incredibly cool. And, the things that you could do with that are infinite. So I'm excited to hear from you. You've written in the past about what are the components of a great business? What are you looking for? I can't find the tweet. At one point you had written like a really good, just like, synopsis of what are the components of a great business. Can we walk through that and talk about what you believe makes a great business?
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, it's what you just hit on is something that really attracted me to this. And this whole world has been, I've just learned it as I went. I didn't come from a schooling background in this kind of stuff. I went to school for aviation and aerospace degree. and then went, through the transformation of being a salesman, marketer, to, like a commission sales type person, to launching a business with angel investors, to, so I became kind of a startup guy for a bit, because I thought that's how you get into business. When I was in my 20s, that's all I knew, was if you wanted to go into business, you had to do a startup. And then once I exited a business and sold it, all of a sudden I had a little money, and I didn't want to do a startup because it was so much drama. And then I had this light bulb of like, maybe I should just buy a franchise or something like that. That's an established model. And then I started searching for that. And then I found, oh my gosh, people are selling already established businesses. And so I just stumbled onto like Biz Buy Sell, and it just clicked. And I was like, okay, I think I want to do that. And so, yeah, you found my thread. Thank you.
I put, for those of you who are watching on the internet or in the car, we've got the tweet up, and it was something you actually wrote. Well, I guess October 7th, but you wrote this a long time ago. This is a repost, right? Because I remember it from. I love when people run high quality stuff. Again, I have no harm, no issue with that. The tweet is titled "How to Identify a Great Deal When Buying a Business. You may want as many of these attributes as possible."
Yes. So yeah, I just stumbled into this space. And then over time, I kind of had the same epiphany as you, Eric. I was like, man, if I'm advising people on doing deals, buying and selling companies, I have this privileged position of being behind the confidentiality veil, where I get to see all their numbers, full access pass to the data, but then I have access to the human. And businesses are just collections of people. And the more you know the great people that build these businesses and are able to sit down and have coffee and lunch with them and say, hey, what was your secret sauce? Like, how were you able to be so successful in this space? If you have that conversation 1,000 times, you get X-ray vision into like what makes a business great. And I think it's just fascinating. And for me, I feel like I probably would be a little more successful as a business broker if I focused on like just one city or one industry. But I cast a wide net, and I just try to do good deals with good people. That's kind of our motto. And I'm a generalist, so I've worked probably across 40 different industries so far as a sell side advisor, and I just love that, being able to scratch that kind of like shiny object syndrome as an advisor, to learn about all these different industries from all these different owners, and then I get all these insights into, sometimes you learn something from a manufacturing person that's perfect to apply to a CPA or something like that. And that those people would have never talked. And I'm, as a generalist, able to like be a good advisor because of all the experience, speaking across all these industries. So this list that I made that you just pulled up was just kind of an amalgamation of, if I could start all over again and I was just going to go buy a business, what would be the attributes I would look for?
Yeah.
Not talking about any specific industry, but what are kind of the universal attributes of what makes a good deal. And so that's what we pulled up.
So Eric,
I was going
to say, let's pound through these real quick.
Let's talk about them.
Yeah.
So I gotta move my screen here.
Can you see it? So number I'll read them off, Kevin.
So
number one is, go ahead, Kev.
I was going to say number one is clean books. And it's funny the way you write this. You don't say clean books. You say clean books, clean books, clean books. Easy to understand P&L and tax returns, no funny business. I presume there's a reason this is number one, and there's a reason you said clean books 3 times. So break that one down for us.
I think accounting is kind of the cornerstone of what makes a business great, because people can say why business exists all they want, but at the end of the day, they have to make a profit. They have to make money. And for you to be able to finance a deal and know what's going on in a business, you have to keep good records and good accounting practices. And so if I'm looking for a business to buy, I'm typically, there's some good deals to be had when you come into an absolute mess, a train wreck with really bad books. If you're like the forensic type person that can figure out what's really going on there, make sense of it, and get into a distressed deal or muddy waters of finance, sometimes you can get a real good deal done. But that's kind of its own specialty. If you have a good, clean set of books, it's way easier to raise. Like, I think the harder part is getting a lender on board.
Yeah.
So most people getting into this space, they're trying to create some leverage to their purchase, and they get huge returns on their cash by creating leverage through financial engineering. And the cornerstone of that, and what everyone likes, investors and banks, is clean books.
Yeah.
And so a good set of books are kind of that cornerstone where you're able to build a really nice financial structure, and then everybody from your bank and investors and that's going to want a piece of this are going to be on board, and it makes your fundraise really easy. So that's a big one.
So let me ask you this, because I think it'll be informative from a different perspective, particularly a different advisor role in this ecosystem. So we recently had Elliot Holland on the podcast, and maybe you haven't listened to the episode, but maybe you've seen some of the quotes on social. He dropped a like kind of breathtaking stat, and it was a little off the cuff. I think, it's give or take. I don't know how accurate, but he said that his best guess is that probably 40% of all deals that he reviews from a quality of earnings perspective doesn't just have bad numbers, but has like outright fraud in the financials, like in the books, like people making up numbers, like intentionally kind of doctoring numbers. I'm curious from your seat, particularly in the advisor ecosystem, what your reaction to that is. If you feel like that's the same, if you see a lot of sellers that you start digging in and you're like, guys, what is going on here? Would you push back on that, at least from your perspective, in terms of how engineering, you use the term financial engineering, so maybe there's just a difference on the definition of what fraud means, but curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So Elliot and I spar sometimes on Twitter, and we have fun.
Yes,
with
you
each
do.
other.
I love this question, Kevin. Please.
That is a great question. I think that we are coming from a few different lenses.
Sure.
And so you got to remember, the people that hire him are buyers that are hiring with a skeptical eye for him to kind of like break apart this business. And I don't see that level of fraud because like, I feel like we turn away probably 80 to 90% of folks that come to us to sell their business, because we have the ability to like that X-ray vision I was talking about earlier, to kind of sniff test a deal. And we're trying to see, is this, first off, a size, because we'll get to that in our next point, but like there's a size range we like to work in. We turn a lot of people away because they're just too small. You can't prove enough earnings for me to reliably say I can get this deal done. And so there are brokers out there that will take, there's some good deals out there that have millions of dollars of revenue but negative earnings. And I rarely take those on. I actually have one right now that's negative earnings, so I have one exclusion to that, but like normally I don't, because I like to see a clear path to the goal line. And so we filter by size, we filter by quality of bookkeeping, and then by the owner's involvement and all these kind of qualitative factors that we're going to talk through here. And a lot of these are just from my experience as a broker. What makes a business sellable? We've really figured that out at this point. And so I think that 80, 90% that we turn away for various reasons, the wrong size, bad bookkeeping and accounting practices, or too wrapped around the owner, those are some of the biggest problems, or customer concentration, things like that. I think a lot of those owners go away, and then they find another broker that will take them on, and they'll for sale by owner it, but they'll know kind of the problems already because I've told them those problems. So I'm not surprised to hear that some of those folks for sale by owners or from less reputable brokers do end up
still get to market
on the market, do end up under contract, do end up on Elliot's desk, and do end up getting uncovered for BS, because for me, it's like we die if we don't close deals.
Right.
Like we're a success fee organization.
Yep.
And so the worst possible scenario for us is to take something to market that somebody like Elliot's going to find fraud in 11 months of work deep, and we've got nothing to show for all that effort of packaging and marketing and negotiating and doing all this, because we do all our work front loaded. We don't get paid until the very end. And so it's like a nightmare for us to take something like that to market. So I feel like the incidences of that are extremely low with a quality brokerage shop, because they've kind of filtered that out and over their years of experience, they can find good deals with good people and bring those to market. And that's the value reputable brokers bring to the table.
No, that's super helpful context. Eric, what's point number 2?
So number 2 is adjusted earnings, SDE or EBITDA between 250 and 900 is the sweet spot for maximizing ROI on both your money and time. Smaller can be better relative percentage gains, but too time consuming. Bigger can be less time consuming, but you have to pay a higher multiple. Talk to us about this, Clint. I've always, and I will tell you, this is not what we hear from buyers. Most buyers say 750 to 1.5. So contrast it to that as well.
Yeah. This is an opinion. This is an opinion based on where I'm at in life. And I meet people that have very much higher net worths than me, that they won't even look at something that's under, 2 million EBITDA, et cetera. And so you have to take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I'm kind of like upper middle class guy, I would say, but not like, I don't have a huge pile of capital to work with. And so I'm looking to, there's like a spectrum. If you're just starting out, baby entrepreneur, and you want to get maximum ROI on the very limited amount of dollars, you get a small deal at a very low multiple, and your sweat and effort gives you this huge return on cash because it's mostly you, right? Like you created all that value. When you buy a business, you're buying some already
buying the
created
proverbial job versus a business in the way it's described online or by some.
Yeah. So, I mean, to make it an extreme example, you could go buy a business for $10 and you build it into $1 million business. What's your cash on cash return when you sell it? I mean, it's astronomical, right? But if you buy a $100 million business and you just grow it, 10%, also you made 10 times more than the guy that bought it for $10 and you only grew it 10%, And so there's like this spectrum. And so I think you got to find a balance. Most of the buyers we work with are like normal people that are trying to put usually 6 figures of down payment into a deal. That's like the average buyer that we work with. Is there most of our deals are like 7-figure deals with 6-figure down payments. And I think that creates this sweet spot of saying, hey, this is not a financial instrument that you're buying. The ones that are financial instruments, you're looking at single digit returns on your money. The ones that are startups, it's infinite returns on your money, that because you're creating all the value. But there's some sweet spot in between where I think you can get
losses, one of the two, but
right. Yeah. And so I think there's a sweet spot for people that are willing to create value, get into the trenches, be an owner operator where they're actually going in there and improving the business, driving sales, and they're also deploying capital at the same time. And I think that there's a sweet spot. I said 250 to 900 because I think that's the range where you can buy it. Like most of the deals in there average at a 2 to 3x multiple. They're also they're not super dialed in with the management team, with the accounting, with all these things. There's room to improve the marketing and the processes where you can get organic growth, which supercharges your returns. So you're able to like get into that zone. And then that also gets you an opportunity to cross that $1 million threshold, which is, you said it earlier, like most of my buyers, I talked to a lot of buyers that are looking for that million and up. Yeah. I do too. But when you get above $1 million, the multiples jump substantially in my experience. So instead of that, you can't get that 2 to 3x multiple deal at once you're at north of $1 million EBITDA. It's extremely rare.
Yeah.
Once you're north of $1 million EBITDA, like 4, is more common and up depending on industry. And so I think the biggest like leveraged play is leveraging your money with an SBA loan, which can typically only take you close to that $1 million EBITDA, because once you get too much above that, you get out of their lending capacity. And so you can get maximum financial leverage, but you can also get maximum operational leverage to get an imperfect company more modernized and revolutionized and add value with your sweat. And that supercharges you and gets you over that hump to now you could be a target for private equity someday, or a target for institutional capital that will pay a much higher multiple. And so I think that if I'm a buyer, I like buying just underneath the big boys and then turning a company into something that could be a target for the big boys. And I think that's where you get multiple expansion and you get the leverage from the SBA loan and the leverage from your skills and time. And that's this perfect storm of like triple benefit of your return. And that's why I bookmarked it in that range. Does that make sense?
It does. So the idea is start modest with a low multiple and then quickly accelerate yourself into multiple expansion by growing through sweat equity in an asymmetrical bet. For most people, most typical Main Streeters will say guys like you and I that didn't grow up, with privilege.
I think that's especially true in today's environment versus maybe a year, 2 years ago, right? Where, when you have, obviously it all depends on your, cash flow, et cetera. But when you're pushing multiples up 4 or 5x in a, 11 to 12% SBA loan interest rate environment, it's harder to get deals done.
Yeah. And I may push a little bit lower on that deal size than a lot of people on SMB Twitter, because I think a lot of the thought leaders in our space are coming from private equity or the MBA business school backgrounds or traditional search, which generally look for that 2 million and up EBITDA. And a lot of the biggest thought leaders came from the zero interest rate environment where it was more about financial engineering than it was about the sweat side of the equation. And I think that there's like a healthy balance to go downstream a little bit and to put a little bit more emphasis on the hard work of this thing and the entrepreneurial skill of this thing, and not just the financial leverage part.
And a quick side note before we go on to point 3 on that thread, Clint, I'd be curious to know what you're seeing from buyers, because I think you're right. We see a lot of thought leaders who come from certain backgrounds, elite MBAs, former private equity and things like that. What are you seeing as buyers? Is that your typical buyer, or are you seeing a lot more kind of tradespeople who are, 15 years in deciding I'd rather own my HVAC company or HVAC company instead of work for it? What do you see on the sell side from the buyer profile?
Yeah, I think the buyer thing that will surprise maybe some listeners in our circles is that, the stereotypical 30-year-old MBA that's a searcher, self-funded or traditional searcher, they're overrepresented on Twitter, but very underrepresented at the closing table with Main Street deals, with premium Main Street deals where we play. There's a whole lot of people that are in their 40s and 50s that are corporate refugees. They have a multiple 6-figure paying corporate job. They're not on Twitter. They are professionals in some form or another. They've led other people's businesses as managers or division managers or leaders, and we sell a lot of them businesses. So it's very, and I feel like there's this legend out there where it's like every seller is this baby boomer that's using their fax machine and ready to retire, and then the buyer is going to be this 20 or 30-year-old wet behind the ears, out of B school buyer.
Kill the fax and make over the website, Clint. That's all you need.
That's not totally over exaggerated though. There is a lot of that going on. But what you said underrepresented at the closing table. Are you saying that there's not strong pull through for searchers, or are you say what do you mean by that?
I mean that it's not our stereotypical buyer that actually gets the deal done. So we get a lot of those guys looking, and we like them and we talk to them. But when it comes time to put your name on the dotted line, these guys that are the 40, 50-year-olds that have a few $100,000 liquid in their brokerage account that the younger guys don't, and that are more relatable for the sellers, like they have a big advantage, and they will come out of the woodwork, and you don't know they're not at our conferences, and they're not on Twitter with us, but they're just like solid operators and solid buyers. And what I wanted to break the stereotype of is like we have many deals where the seller's like in their 40s and the buyers is in their 50s.
Yeah.
And it's like this weird,
interesting.
It's a weird dynamic, but I can probably explain that a little bit. Is like I just did a deal on an off-road shop with Justin, who was with us on
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro,
Yeah.
and he told his story, and it's very typical. Like he's young, he's in his 40s, like maybe mid 40s, early 40s. He was a
Yeah.
seller,
Maybe. Yeah.
but he had done this shop. He had built up an off-road shop over 20 plus years, so he had done it since he was just a pup, probably 20 years old, as a technician, and then built a shop and built a bigger shop and then built this really nice business. But then at some point he realizes, and a lot of times these sellers, it's not only the retirees, it's people that are saying, man, if I'm ever going to do anything else with my life, because I've been doing this business for 10, 20
Yeah.
years and I've got it to
Yep.
about as far as my skills can take me here, then it's time for me to sell. Because if not, like, a lot of these people are self-aware enough to know that I'm pretty much limiting the growth of this company at this time, and I'm still got gas in the tank. I want to go do something else with my life. And a lot of times it coincides with empty nester syndrome, when people are
Hmm.
in their late 40s, or their kids just went off and their business got their kids through school, and they're just looking at their life and they're like, man, is this going to just be a repeat Groundhog Day existence running this small business, or am I ready to take a few $1,000,000 home and go reinvent myself? It's a perfect time for that.
Well, this is bad news for Eric, because I'm about to send my first kid off to college. So sometime here in the next 2 to 3 years, I think
Kevin's day to day.
I think I'm out.
I've known this about you, Kevin. You're absolutely day to day, but I've known that since day one. So every time I get a text from you saying, "Hey, you got 5 minutes," I'm like,
this is the day.
yes, but what about, Kevin? No, but to your point, Clint, I actually have had several transactions within the last month that I can think of specifically where the seller has been early 40s.
Mhm.
And in
Mhm.
each of those cases, either they've got a significant other who's late 30s or trying to start a family, and they're gritty grind, entrepreneurs that have been doing it for 2 decades, have built hardy enterprises and are doing a $5 to $10 million exit, or they have a family, that's getting a little bit older, and they're like, okay, we want to go change gears. My guess for those people, those are the non-compete red flags, and not red flags, but those are the ones where we need to make sure that the non-compete says 5 years, because an entrepreneur like that, my bet is they take 2 years off, they rest up, and then they go, what am I doing with myself? And then they're back in it. And if their best skill set, particularly in like a technical area, that their best skill set is to go back into that technical area, for a buyer, you got to look out for a 3-year non-compete where it's 2 years of rest and 1 year of preparation. Because Clint, like, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, Kevin's an entrepreneur. Like, could you sell Bison tomorrow for 10 million bucks and just hang out and do nothing? Like, and I know your
No.
answer would probably be, I'll go do different things, but like, there's no chance, man, that you're just going to hang out for the rest of
Be
your life.
retired.
That's a
Can't
great
do it.
question. So for me, like, I could go do different things, but I have a track record of switching industries. So I've had, a few different careers. When you're talking to that 40, 50-year-old seller, that's definitely not going to sit on the beach and retire. They're going to go kill it at something. You want to make sure they're not going to slit your throat in 3 years after non-compete. The most important question to ask is to say, what's life going to be like for you on the other side of this deal? And make sure that they have a clear vision. The I don't know, or I'm just going to think about it for a while, especially ones that have been 20 years in one industry. They're going to think about it for a while. They're going to watch you flounder and not run the company as well as they think they could have. And then their favorite customers and employees are going to call them bitching about the way you run the company. And then they might get a bright idea in 3 years. You know what? I could do this better in a whole new way, and go do this all again, and then sell it for $5 or $10 million again in a few years. And they probably can. And so if I've got that younger seller, I want to make sure that, so like, I sold a trailer manufacturer from a young guy who's in his 40s, and the buyer got really comfortable with it because he had launched several RV parks, and he had money down for the land on another, and the capital from this transaction was going to help him build out like a third really big one. and he could see like this guy's time is already getting pulled this other direction, and he's making more money over here on these RV parks than he does at this trailer manufacturer. And so like you could see that he already had that next thing going.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to get comfortable with that than the guy that's like, I don't know, I just want a little time off and then I'll see, I don't know. Like that's to me is more the red flag than just the age in itself.
Yeah. Well, let's keep powering through here. Otherwise this podcast is going to run 3 hours. So point three,
Let's
Clint,
do it. I'll clear my schedule.
Not too wrapped around the current owner. You link to a different thread on figuring out how to figure out if an SMB is over reliant on the selling owner, but break that down for a second. What do you mean here? Not too wrapped around the current owner.
Yeah. So often we come across businesses that their financials do look great. So they've checked all the check boxes. They've got clean books. They're making good money. But when you get down to it, you're like, man, this business is not gonna survive without this owner.
Yeah.
And so, I did a whole thread within the thread. My threads are like Inception. You got to go layers
Very
deep
meta.
here. But that one was talking about, how do you tell that one's too wrapped around the owner?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like when you call the business, does someone else besides the owner answer? The most common thing you hear in Sims and from brokers and from sellers that they think is a good thing, but I think is a bad thing, is they say, we don't spend any money on marketing. You ever heard that? They brag about it,
Yeah, every time.
And you can see it on their P&L. They spend no money on marketing, but they're doing $5 million in revenue.
Yeah.
And they're all proud of it. And you're like, well, how do you make sales? And they almost act like it's this magic, or that it's like, there's just the strength of their brand is so good, and if you buy it, you're gonna buy this magic that creates this $5 million of revenue with zero marketing. And more often than not, it's not magic. It's relationships built over decades that belong to the selling owner that go away when they sell.
Yep.
And so like that's a huge risk. And so I like to see on a P&L, when we're talking about a good deal, I like to see marketing. I like to see expenses for marketing. I like to see that they've invested in a way to generate leads that is scalable, predictable, as a lever you can pull as the buyer, and isn't just the black magic voodoo of, I don't know, it's just amazing. It's all word of mouth. That's what they say. It's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for me to get comfortable with as a buyer. So that's the biggest red flag. And then beyond that, there's a lot of these companies have real technical things. And so if I have like someone that comes to me that's the number one grandfather clock repairman that's making, even if he's making $1 million, if that seller is repairing the grandfather clocks, I'm like, I'm out. There's a lot of times they just have that.
How do you replace that? Yeah.
How do you replace the technical side, or how do you replace? So there's two main things. It's the technical prowess. Do you have the technical bench on the company that's going to go with the sale? And do you have the rev gen? Do you have marketing and inbound opportunities that aren't directly tied to the owner? So that's kind of the two biggest things you need to look for. But in that thread, I go into all these other ways you can kind of tease that out by asking them if they've ever been on a long vacation lately, and to give you some examples. That's a big one. Just ways you can kind of get through the BS, all word of mouth, and say, hey, well, get more specific here, and you can tease that out.
So in the interest of time, we'll put the thread in the show notes, and there's a lot here. There's a lot of really good tips. Anything, Clint, that is in the, and I'll read them off really quickly, just really fast, going back to the beginning. In business for at least 3 years, at least 5 employees, strong revenue per head, geographically located somewhere with a growing population, good reviews, reputation trending upwards. similar, I guess, transferable skills and background and experience, strong margins, rich owner. That's always a fun one. I always look at big houses and I go, who lives there? And then I daydream about career paths. But so that's a good one. Most revenue is recurring or reoccurring. No family members at key positions, small market share, industry tailwinds, competitive moat. I'll stop here. But Clint, anything else? And what of these ones, just briefly here, what's the next most, or what's the single most important quality? You're looking at a business, and if it's not there, you're not buying it. And you have to pick one.
I'm gonna go off script here, Eric, and I would say the most important quality is in the mirror. So, like, look at yourself in the mirror, and I think the most important quality when you look at any deal is to get out of your freaking spreadsheet and get out of the finances and stop looking at these as financial instruments. I think that's this space goes bonkers with people because the returns are eye-popping. And you posted stuff a week or two ago, Eric, and people were trolling you.
Clint, the returns can be eye-popping.
Yes.
Okay, I want to qualify that.
The way...
go ahead.
And I'm not even talking like can be like 1 in a million eye-popping. I'm talking about the middle of the fairway, normal, structured, quality deal that you put 10 or 20% down on and just don't screw it up. Like, not even talking crazy talk here. Those returns are still eye-popping.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, buying at a 2 or 3x multiple or 2 to 4x, mathematically, if you were to translate that multiple into a cap rate or a percentage return, you're talking 25 to 50% without any leverage. And then when you apply leverage with debt, your return turns into 100% cash on cash ballpark first year with no growth. That's just like getting in there and not screwing it up.
Servicing the debt. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those numbers aren't.
Let's pause though. Let's just acknowledge we are not financial advisors, and we are also not investment bankers. Seek financial counsel before making any strategic investments, particularly those that pertain risk, entrepreneurial lawyers, CPAs. Talk to smart people before you make these decisions. But please continue, Clint.
Eric guarantees these types of results.
I'm just saying, every time.
You shared a post that was like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that was like, hey, life changes when you discover you can invest this much and give this much back. And no one freaking believed you. And it gave you all this pushback from people that aren't exposed to this space. But I'm like, yeah, that's kind of normal for like a deal that doesn't go bad. That's pretty normal.
Well, let's address that for just a second. And I won't say exactly what the tweet was poorly written, but it was intended to address investors in the deals, not sponsors. Obviously, sponsors should never expect passive income, but there are many people who give sponsors capital to buy businesses and then fade off into the sunset and receive, the upside, the downside in an extremely passive way. That is normal. That's what I was addressing. And what I suggested in that, and again, poorly written, and there was a lot of clarification. I think a lot of people learned about small business investment terms. The tweet was seen by upwards of 1 million people at three quarters of a million direct impressions, but then there was so much back and forth. And as an aside, the very interesting part about that tweet is that I sent the exact same tweet with the exact same words back in March, and it was extremely well received. And it was so well received that we actually, myself and others in the space, went on in the subsequent days to write technical pieces about small business investment terms, really getting into the weeds of it. And again, universally positively accepted. Flash forward to November of 2023, I write the same tweet, and was very negatively received by two particular communities: real estate investors and venture capital investors. And to me, it was a really important indicator, and also SMB sponsors. And it was a really important indicator of a couple of things in terms of market sentiment, what's going on in the world right now, and being a little bit more delicate about how we talk about returns, because there are a lot of asset classes that are really struggling, and it's been negative. But you're right. A lot of SMB investors, two responses from SMB investors was, stop talking about this. One, why are you telling anybody about this? There was a lot of that, like in the DMs being like, what do you like?
We don't
Stop.
talk about Fight Club, Eric.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. But two, supporting the idea that the base case for an SMB investment, we'll talk about why this is, but the base case for an SMB investment, if you're going to take your capital and put it into a small business deal, give it to a sponsor to buy a business. They need a 10% equity injection, sometimes less, sometimes more, to consummate a deal. And they come to you and say, hey, Clint, I need $300,000 in capital to close on this HVAC business. Will you give it to me? What most SMB investors, and these things can vary, and terms vary, and there's market terms, I think, to an extent, but broad strokes, it's still largely the Wild West. But what most sophisticated, experienced investors are going to say is, I need it to at pencil at least a 25 to 35% base case return on investment in order to have this investment make sense. And the reason that they say that is investing in small businesses is risky and it's illiquid, meaning if the business has issues, or if you have issues, it's very challenging to get your money out of there. Your kid gets sick, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars for medical expenses. You can't call up the HVAC business and say, give me my cash back, right? Like you can with a stock market investment or other more liquid investments. So there's a lot of considerations. And again, consult a financial advisor on this. But that was an interesting moment in time, Clinton. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of people learned SMB investment terms during that period of time. And it's a really fascinating proposition. And to me, what excites me about this space, again, my personal opinion alone, is that the people, because business buying is not a new phenomenon, right? Like businesses have been bought and sold for a very long time. The new phenomenon to me that excites me, and again, I could be wrong in this is my own personal investment thesis, but this new generation of buyers that want to go to Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, and could go to Goldman, McKinsey. And again, there are a lot of people who say those people are not qualified in the right ways to run these businesses. I don't agree. I think over the course of 30 years, somebody who's always been successful in their life, has risen to the highest levels of education, has worked in the most exclusive places to work, that now want to go buy an HVAC business in rural Georgia, like that's a guy or gal I want to give my money to and watch what happens over the next 30 years. That's my take. Could be wrong. Well, returns will vary, but that's my rant on that. It's a very interesting space.
Yeah.
Well, I'm lost. What are we talking about now?
I don't even know. I think we should just wrap on that. Cut. End scene.
End scene. No, I think so.
Go ahead, Kev.
I think there are two things we need to get to. Number one, both Clint and I posted on Twitter what people want to hear about. I think we could do some rapid fire questions, but let's save that for the end here for a second. I do want, and I think it's still a good thread as we start to pivot slightly from talking about how to identify a good business to buy and things like that. Clint, let's talk a little bit about the philosophy of entrepreneurship and sort of your approach to why you own your own business, why you like helping other people sell and buy businesses and become entrepreneurs. You haven't always been an entrepreneur, and I think have felt led to this community for a lot of reasons. Let's talk about that for a second. So break down your personal philosophy of entrepreneurship and why you're kind of long on this ETA model.
Yeah, I'm very long on this space. I'm very bullish on ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, mainly because I get it. Like, I was that guy that I didn't fit into most traditional boxes. And so that for me looked like went to school to become an airline pilot and then discovered it was this long multi-decade corporate career where you're climbing a ladder the whole time and you're gone from your family half the time. And it just like the appeal, I realized man, I like airplanes and I like flying and stuff, but the thought of that being a cog in that wheel and that big old machine and climbing a ladder for the rest of my life, when I discovered there's a way to kind of create your own destiny and to build the life that you want.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that inside big corporate structures. And my business, Bison Business, is just a reflection of me and my values as a human. And I believe that ETA is a way for folks to build that life of their dreams that are mid career, that are like, you can do it from the start, but it's probably one of the only ways you can semi safely do it when you're mid career.
Yeah.
And reinvent yourself in a way that's going to more align with your heart and your values. And like, again, look at the person in the mirror, look at the guy or gal in the mirror and be like, what really is important to you? What really matters? And
so break that down, because I imagine even as an entrepreneur, you probably struggle with the similar things I do. And there's a lot of talk in Twitter and things about that, like become an entrepreneur, then you control your own destiny and you can kind of like build the life you want. But like also at the end of the day, I put in a lot of hours. I still make a lot of compromises on my time and things like that. How, like concretely for a second, what are those values and what do you do to protect those as an entrepreneur? Because it's very, very easy, at least from where I sit, even as an entrepreneur and owning a business, to kind of have your life end up looking very corporate again, where like, I don't have, you have to make compromises on family time because you've got to like clock in and things like that. How do you avoid that? Like, what are those values and how do you protect those as an entrepreneur in the business you're building?
The difference is you have a gas pedal and a brake pedal. So I think the entrepreneurs can totally miss the mark and miss. So for me, like a big core thing, we talked about this in our intimate time on the tent
right.
on the side of the mountain. But like,
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall of that tent. I'm just very sad, but please continue.
But like a deep hole in my heart, a deep wound was like my father screwed up when I was a kid. He became an addict and was alcoholic, and we got to see him arrested a couple times, and he bailed on our family. And then I had this like forced visitation for a season of my life, and then I ran away and never wanted to see him again. We've since reconciled. It's a really beautiful story. He's a great grandfather to my kids now, but he wasn't there for me when I needed him as a child. And so like entrepreneurs are classically like, they can do the same thing, right? Like you can be so obsessed with your
100%.
small business that you never go to your kids' games, and you miss out and you blow it with your kids, you blow it with your wife. Like you're totally capable of that, but you can blow it with a big law firm, right? Like you can blow it with all these other things. But the difference is you have a gas pedal, you can go as big as you want, as ambitious as you want, but you can also tap the brakes when you need to and take care of the things that are even more important to you than money. And for you, Kevin, I'm like, I don't ever want to hear, that you're screwing it up with your family, because right. I'm like, dude, you could just do a few less deals, man. Like
Eric won't let me.
You guys are crushing it.
Clint, your signal's breaking up there. We're gonna wrap on that note.
We're losing you. Yeah, but I mean, you have control of that. And so just because some guys put their foot on the gas so hard they drive off the cliff doesn't mean it's fundamentally flawed. It just
right.
means they didn't know how to drive. They didn't know how to drive with their brake pedal and their gas pedal, and to build the life that they wanted. And so
to delegate it, to be more specific. I mean,
100%.
Yeah,
that's the most common problem, is we don't know how to delegate. I struggle with that for sure. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't feel like I've made it financially. And I was actually hesitant to come on a podcast with the name of Mundane Millionaires, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm that guy. I don't know if I'm the guy you want to talk to, but like,
let's talk about that though, Clint. I mean, so what is a mundane millionaire, right? Like we've defined this in a sense, but it's the person who is seeking the richest in their life, not just financially, right? But if I were to put one word on the mundane millionaire, it's the control, right? It's having the control back in your life. And when we look at our audience and the people that we interact with in our client base, what is the common denominator in every single one of them? It is that they are exhausted by being told what to do by other people. They're tired of not having the upside, and they're willing to accept the downside if it means they get that control of their life back, right? And what is like the modern American dream of the and I'm sure that this applies to an equal extent across both genders, but 25 to 45-year-old men in this country right now, the ones that I know, are exhausted. They want the control back in their life. And the American dream for them right now, our cohort, is to build a great life where they make a great living, but have that control so they can also have a great family. The have it all scenario for them is not being a C-suite executive or having, work travel. It's not having a personal jet. It's being able to make a good living, but also get to their kid's soccer game and coach at 4:00 on a Thursday and not have to ask for permission to do it, or not have to commute home 45 minutes at 7 p.m. at night and be home just in time to say goodnight to the kids. Like that's the mundane millionaire. That's who we all are. And I think, talk about your experience, Clint. Like, you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. Like, does that, how many years have you been doing it, and when do you get to that point where you feel like you've got the control?
Yeah. So I honestly think there's an over index on the financial part of this game on social media. And honestly, there's a lot of people that would be better served staying in their corporate career path and just climbing that ladder. If your goal is to have the most dollars in your bank account and the most security and the highest, like, if your goal is mainly financial, a lot of people, like, at one point in my career, in my mid 20s, I was a commercial aviation insurance agent, and I was the number one broker in a large agency that was national in scope, and I was making good money, and I was on a path to probably, like, make, you keep your book of business compounding, and then you kind of get untouchable with this huge client base, and then you potentially become a partner or take over the business or something like that. And I was, number one out of 50 agents doing this niche PNC insurance thing. And, like, I almost look back, and if I just stayed with that, I might have a higher net worth today than what I've done. But I also think I wouldn't be able to live with myself for the regret I would have of not pursuing the higher things on my heart besides just the safest path to the most dollars, and to exercise creativity to be able to build a life of my dreams with my family, which is bigger than dollars. So, like, I just got back from, like, a 5-state road trip with my 4 kids and my wife, and I posted about this on Twitter last week. It got a lot of attention, but like, my 13-year-old planned the whole trip. I gave her a budget, and she, like, planned it all out. And I didn't know when we were going on it. I just had blackout dates when I had conferences and things I couldn't do it on. But I'm like, you've got a whole year, you've got a budget, we'll go anywhere you want. It's your world, we're just living in it. And that wouldn't be possible if I had this traditional path. And so we homeschool our children. Their dad is there for them in a way that mine wasn't. I don't have this massive net worth or anything. Like, probably many of your guests will be a lot richer than me when it comes to just dollars and cents. But I've got, like, a nice pool in the backyard. I've got a beautiful family. I've got a little plane 20 minutes away in a hangar, and the ability to fly it from my formal education training, and just a ton of freedom in my life. And my business is super flexible. Most of the time I'm on the phone or doing emails. You can do that from anywhere on the planet. Most of the time, just like you guys. I have a team we have an office, but we have some distributed teammates. So I've built a very nice little company that's very flexible. We get each other's backs. We back each other up. That's one of our core values. And to me, the business serves the life I wanted to build around my family and my faith and these things that are of deeper importance to me than dollars. And the dollars are good sometimes. And I think I have a path to a good net worth over time. but I also have a for sure thing of a life of no regrets, where I've been able to say, like, I didn't wuss out and take the easy way, like, and just do what everybody else does. And I think one of my biggest fears that brought me to entrepreneurship was, like, I didn't want to be normal. Like, that was like a weird thing about me, but like I just felt like normal was bad, or like I didn't want to get to the end of my life and stand before God one day and then be like, "Oh, so you just did what everybody else did, huh? Cool. That's what you did with it."
Well, congratulations, Clint. You are indeed the least normal person I know. So
That's true. You have
I
checked
kid,
that box, my friend.
No, I love that. I love the sentiment, and I think what at least the approach we bring to this, that we bring to this podcast, that we bring to our guests, is that is wealth by any
Yes.
objective measure that we assign value to.
Yep.
Because I think you're exactly right. There's, it's caught up in the spreadsheet and what the number is at the bottom, and you lose track of, how much time, how much family, how much freedom and things like that play into this idea of building wealth and a wealth mindset.
It's going to resonate with a lot of people.
You guys and me, we're in professions that aren't super well liked. Like brokers and lawyers.
What do you mean?
They're not the most popular people usually, and like, but I want to encourage you guys that, like, what we do is so important because of the people and the life stories. And when you think about a business deal, the best way, the thing that's kept me at this for 8 years, and I'd never done anything for more than 3 years before this, and that keeps going to keep me doing this forever, is that it's like the sacred moment when two life stories intersect, is when a buyer and a seller meet and a deal goes down. And really the only reason someone is buying a business is the same reason someone's selling a business, is because they want to change their life. They're trying to turn a whole new chapter of their life. And we get to be there and help them kind of like turn a whole new chapter or birth themselves into a new life for the rest of their life. And it's a sacred thing. And it's something that I don't think we should hold lightly, because we're in this privileged position to be there, right there, when these lives collide and these life stories change. And I think that's a huge part of the fun part of what we do.
Well, I think what you're describing, because I couldn't agree with you more, and I think sacred is a great word to describe it, because these are massively important transactions. For the seller, you're talking about selling their life's work. You're talking about their nest egg for retirement. You're talking about a moment that is going to, provide them financial trajectory for the rest of their life in most cases. And obviously some of them are younger, like we talked about earlier. For the buyer, we're talking about a massively pivotal moment where it's going to affect the trajectory of their life moving forward, their financial life, but also their quality of life. Most of them have kids looking at them, spouse looking at them, counting on them to get it right, is massively important. And what is going to keep guys like you and me, who are notoriously, if you look at my career path, a lot of change, right? And a lot of job change, because I'm an entrepreneur. And that's what I think pure play entrepreneurs are constantly looking for. What's the next angle? What's the next thing? But what's going to keep guys like me and you in a particular discipline, and it's passion, not for the task, but for the person. Like, I feel insane passion. Like, I'll talk to these guys at 3:00 in the morning, when they can't sleep because they're worried about, should I do this deal? Should I not do this deal? With no problem. I'm not thinking about money. I'm not thinking about it's a conversation I would have for free. And so I think that resonates deeply with me as well. So sacred. I like that.
Yeah. No, I love that.
It does feel like a calling, and that's why I think I enjoy it. Is I had been an entrepreneur that had launched and sold a couple companies before I became a broker, and I realized, like, my favorite thing in life was talking to other people that were going through those huge changes, like thinking about leaving my job, starting a company, thinking about buying a company, thinking about selling a company, and like being able to be someone that can come alongside them and put their arm around it and be like, I've been there, I get it. Let's talk this through. Let's look at this holistically. Let's make a plan. Like, I enjoy those conversations. I did those for free when I wasn't getting paid to do it. And when I discovered like you can get paid to do it, I'm like, that makes even more sense than doing it for free.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, it's the sweet
I
spot.
could
and it's
do it for free, but
yeah.
It's cliche. And Kevin, I think that is the common thread within people within our firm. And by the way, this podcast is not associated with our firm, but the people within our firm, it's business buying and these situations, the transactions generally, the buyers, we're insanely passionate about it. I guess I shouldn't say this for ethics purposes, but whatever. We have experience. I can't say we're good at it, but we have experience doing it, and we can make money doing it. And it's the classic Venn diagram that everybody should be looking for in their career. If you can find something you're good at, that you're passionate about, that you can make money doing, it's magic in your life.
Yeah.
It's particularly if you can have that entrepreneurial control to design it in a way that works for you. It's the coolest thing in the world. But it's also entrepreneurship, and it's hard work, and buck stops with you, and there's no one coming to save you, and it's all those things too. So it's fascinating.
So if I could leave with, I don't know, like a few tips of just kind of like finding that balance.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, please do.
Between like living a life well lived and just going for the big bucks and going for the money. Like, I'm entering into the season, I do it every year, of where at the end of the year, I'm a goal oriented guy. I'm always making goals. I'm always making plans. And if left unchecked, I will go too hard. Like I'll hurt my family by going to, because I'm in this unlimited world. Like there's always more deals and more dollars I can chase 24/7, 365. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're often in that unlimited ocean of opportunity, and you can go drown in it, or you can go lose yourself in it and lose yourself what's most important. So I always try to go from a first principles, from like, I'm a God, family, business person in terms of priorities. And so like I schedule out my year, like I'm going to Greece next year. I'm marrying my brother off. I'm going to be the minister at his wedding. Like that's set in stone. Like I'm setting those dates on the calendar right now. Yeah. And then I'm thinking about what are the bucket list things I want to do, like Kilimanjaro this year, was one. And I try to like build a great life that involves, I'm going to be at my kids' stuff. I'm going to go on trips. I'm going to, whatever my passions are, like if I'm going to pursue a new rating on my flight world, that's my big hobby, is flying airplanes. And like, I want to budget accordingly for that out of my time. Our time is our most valuable thing that we have some say over here. And so I budget all that stuff first. And then once I've got time for my health and my family and my faith and these things that I absolutely can't screw up, because you can always make more money, right? You can go bankrupt and screw up and you can come back. You can make more money. But if you blow it in one of these other areas, you might not come back if you lose your health, your family, your faith, those sorts of things. So
I know a lot of people listening to this clip will go, that sounds nice, but I don't have the ability financially or otherwise right now to prioritize those things. I got to make money and I got to get it done. Are the things you're describing, are those accretive or are they limiting, like you just suggested?
I think that's a lie. I think that's a limiting belief, because there's 24 hours in a day. And if you audit, look at your screen time on your phone, look at your whatever, like you have time to work out for 30 minutes a day. You don't have an excuse. Like anyone can be healthy. Anyone can have a good marriage, but they don't happen automatically. Like they take work. And anytime I've not budgeted the time because I felt like I'm too busy, I can't in this season, like I end up blowing it in one of those areas and highly regretting it. But I can look back and be like, I didn't really have to, because I still had enough time to watch movies and be on Twitter and whatever else I was doing. And so I think it's a limiting belief. I think that anyone can succeed with 6 to 10 hours of work in a day, like in this world. And if you feel like you've got to work more than that, get better at delegating. Like Eric was saying, there's something wrong with your business model or with your skill set or with your strategy or something, but it doesn't take 24 hours a day of work to be successful. It takes doing the right things in a focused manner, and you can schedule out vacations and life and fitness and health and family, and then crush it in the gaps. That's the phrase I like to use when I'm talking to people about it. Just crush it in those gaps. In those gaps, let yourself go hog wild, grow your business as big as you can, make as much money as you can, take the lid off your imagination of what you can do and just freaking go for it. But when it's time to do that thing you committed to in the beginning of the year on your calendar, where I'm going to go to Greece and check out, no excuse. Like that's set in stone.
That's happening no matter what.
That is happening.
All right, so everybody, let's pause. I love that. But let's all pause here. Let's all pull our phones out and let's look at our screen time and see who's the biggest degenerate here of the three of us. I'm kidding. I'm definitely not doing that because it's absolutely me. Unquestionable.
I'm 100% doing it right now.
I'm not even doing it. I can't even stomach that right now. But so, okay. All right. So the moment everybody's been waiting for, obviously you tweeted before this, Clint, about topics folks want to talk about. So we need to talk about the Cybertruck.
Couple minutes here. Objectively, the ugliest vehicle ever invented. Full stop. What's next?
Are you, Clint? Are you pro Cybertruck or are you anti Cybertruck? I didn't see your opinion.
I'm a strong pro. I'm in the pro camp. I think it's
you ordered.
I'm on the list.
How do you reconcile the aesthetics of the Cybertruck with like reality? You know, like what is it? So people have got to be suspending this. Like when you watch a movie and you think you get to that point where you're in flow and you think it's real. Like, what are the elements that Elon is doing in his branding to make people believe that truck is not a monstrosity?
In just a few months, everybody's
and they're willing
to
actually invest in it.
I mean, I was repulsed when it was at first shown. Like it was probably like 3 years ago or so. It was a while back when they showed the design.
It's been years, yeah.
And I had the same knee-jerk reaction of like, "What the heck is that? That's not a pickup truck. That's a joke," you know. But I have evolved and become enlightened to its beauty on a functional basis, and it grew on me. I like it, and I'm a kind of form over function guy, and I think it was built on first principles of design, and I think they were bold. I would happily drive one, but I also think that in a few months, once everybody sees them on the road, everybody will get over it really quick, and it's not going to have the shock factor anymore, and it's just going to be more of like
this thing's gonna devolve. This thing's gonna if you're sitting at a red light, okay, and in like a Toyota Camry, and you get rear-ended by one of these, it's going to demolish you.
It's gonna cut cars in half. That's great.
Eric, it's bulletproof. I mean,
it looks like a giant knife
looking. Dude, this thing is a monster. I cannot accept this. I can't accept this, Clint. What is you said first principles of design that feels.
It looks like that, so they can fold it together with a giant press.
Why? Why did we have to make it look like this though? Could we have not made it so? Like the Teslas are like. I think the Tesla is a pretty nice looking car, right? Like it's got a sleek, modern design. It's unique.
Yeah, so you got something for everyone now.
Why did we have to go from that to this? You couldn't have made a truck. There were like mock-ups of the Tesla truck, Cybertruck, that were like amazing when people were guessing at what it was going to look like. See if we can find some of those. I mean, obviously they're going to be drowned out now by like.
I think it was, the compound curves, like that red one, like that's just going to be massively more expensive. So yeah, I think that's just going to be way more money to make.
Production purposes.
Yeah.
So this is okay.
This is probably true. Yeah. I'm sure cost had it.
It kind of makes sense to me.
Say what you will about Elon. Say what you will about Elon, but the fact that he is able to, as a business person, without any marketing, we talked about marketing earlier, he spends no money on marketing. Zero. Tesla does not advertise it, to my knowledge. And the idea that he can, Yeah, for sure. I bet.
I don't do any
The
advertising.
fact that he can mass produce these and focus on production first, and then still have you guys go, yeah, but it's like it's actually pretty cool looking, despite like all objective measures and reality. It's pretty cool because of these first principles. Like his extraordinary business. That's it.
I
That's
mean, it looks
extraordinary.
cool.
The fact that
I
he's
mean, it looks
able-
like it's out of Halo. It looks like it's out of a video game. That's cool.
It does look like it's out of Halo. I'll give it that.
it looks like it's not finished. Like it looks like there's like more work to be done. Like it's like they haven't completed it. It looks.
Oh, well. I don't want to
And
hate
I've-
on the Cybertruck too much. Maybe Eric and I, a year from now, we'll both be Cybertruck drivers and just,
Dude, I'll get one. I mean, if it's awesome and whatever else, and like there's something to it, there's some magic to it there. I'm not opposed to changing my mind. I'm just saying, like, it looks bonkers. Like,
I will
and I,
go
Biggest
on-
turn off for me.
I will go on record and say, go ahead.
There was a prototype that had a bench seat up front, and it was a 6-seater, and I've got a family of 6, and I was really stoked about it when I thought it was going to be 6-seat, and I'm just crushed that they took away my middle seat up front.
It's only 5.
So that's a heartbreak.
I will
Well,
go on
it-
the record to your point, Eric. I will go on the record and say, unless it has a massive makeover, I will never in my life own that truck.
well, so we
get
do.
2.0.
I do all kinds of things in life that are not like I hate the taste of coffee. But I've grown to appreciate it because of the fact that it's caffeinated and it's a warm beverage and it's whatever. And so I drink coffee, even though I don't think it tastes good. And I am not saying I will never drive a Cybertruck simply because it doesn't look good. There may be other elements of it that make it something that I would entertain in my life. But the idea that anybody will sit back and suggest that this thing is not just horrendous is just a bald-faced lie. So we can move past.
Well, hey, let's move on. We're way over time. The one other rapid fire question, Clint. Maybe we spend 30 seconds and then we'll wrap this up and let you go. But multiple people have asked your thought on mandating QOE, whether it's on the buy side or sell side. What are your thoughts as a broker of making your seller pay for an independent quality of earnings review in order to go to market?
That's a dumb idea. I think it's like
Okay. Tell me how you really feel, Clint.
I think it's case by case. I mean, people keep trying to formulate this industry into like templates and checklists and always do this, never do that things. And I don't think it's that simple. And that's what caught me off guard about this industry. I came in green with a little bit of a tech background from the previous company I did before brokerage. And I thought I could just build the most high-tech business brokerage that would standardize everything and use technology super well to automate the crap out of this and make buying and selling super simple for everyone and change everyone's life forever. And then I discovered it's not that freaking easy.
Yeah.
And that like every deal is different. And this is a people first game more than anything. And there are some businesses where I'm like, this absolutely needs to have a QOV before I would trust anything out of this. And there's some that are so simple, and you can see the P&L, the tax return, the POS system, everything matches, everything's super intuitive to understand. I don't even need any due diligence assistance. I can just look at this in an afternoon and know exactly what I'm buying. And I know exactly what I'm going to do with it when I buy it. And why do I need to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get someone else's like stamp on it when it's that simple and straightforward? And so there's a whole spectrum. And then we have like another end of the spectrum where you've got these like people that build complicated webs of entities. So I've sold some businesses that it's like you're buying a business, but they actually ran it as 5 different legal entities that were all related, doing transactions with each other for various legal and tax reasons. And then if you look at the accrual basis, you got $1 million difference versus the cash basis on the numbers, and it's all flowing between these companies and stuff. And I'm like, holy crap, even as a broker, I'm like, I'm pretty smart, but like, I can't really stand behind what I'm going to say EBITDA is on this until I get like someone that's got a forensic background to like really
Yeah.
Like, and so I've made a seller pay for a QOV from a third party before in a complicated situation like that, and to show us, what do you think here is really going on if you smush these 5 entities together, and show us the real story from a arm's length third party. You know, like sometimes that's necessary, but I don't think there's a one size fits all, and that's why I think anything where you say mandatory, I'm going to throw the BS flag at that. Like, no, it's case by case.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Final question, Clint. Best pizza topping combination. Go.
I knew you were going to ask that. I had one.
You just say something weird. He just said he
Nah,
liked
dude.
the Cybertruck. So this guy's about to say like steak and potatoes or something great off the wall. Let's hear it, Glenn.
Dude, I had one in Telluride last week at Brown Dog Pizza. Shout out to Brown Dog. Please sponsor the podcast.
Let's look it up.
I'm looking it up right now.
Super good. It was a Detroit style chicken pesto. It was like
Let's go.
tomato sauce and pesto sauce on a deep dish, kind of Detroit style, and it had chicken, and man, that one was
Okay.
super good. But Brown Dog nailed it. I'm kind of like,
Brown Dog, if you're hearing this, get on Twitter, man. Come on.
Yeah.
It's like
So a
you're not on
couple
Twitter.
things I want to just mention just casually. One, I'm from Detroit. So Detroit style pizza. 2, I'm licensed in Colorado, where Telluride happens to be. 3, I love pizza. And 4, I've got a podcast and a social media following. Shout out to Brown Dog Pizza. I think we can wrap on that.
yeah, that was good.
Clint,
But
thanks
I'm
for joining us. I'm
open-minded about pizza.
think you
I'll
plugged your
eat any
stuff at the
pizza.
beginning. Fair enough. You plugged your stuff at the beginning. One more time, tell us where listeners can find you on Twitter and interact and engage with you, and we'll wrap it up there.
My social media is the easiest way to get me, and it's my name spelled out, Clint, Clint, Fiore, Fiore. So most of the platforms I'm at Clint Fiore. And then on the business side, if you want to get in touch with my team, they're actually easier to get to than I am most of the time. If you've got a deal you need help on, just go to bisonbusiness.com and call our main office line, or reach out to us through any of the forms on our website, and you'll get a good response from our team.
Love it.
All right. That's a wrap.
Clint, it's always a pleasure. You will have the distinct honor of being our longest episode yet. Really appreciate the time.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Clint.
Thanks, fellas. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mundane Millionaires. If you enjoyed what you heard in this episode, make sure to follow Mundane Millionaires wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. See you next time.